Watch this jump cut and we'll talk on the other side.
TikTok, it is not a ban. And I don't care how many times you want to put that out on social media, it's not a ban. But again, thank you for proving our point that you're manipulators.
Indeed, TikTok is manipulating through the algorithm, just like any other app. Facebook has been manipulating since the inception of their algorithm, and most notably through their relationship with Cambridge Analytica. Google has been manipulating, so much so that class action lawsuits were filed. Apple has been manipulating its products, such as the Battery Gate controversy. Everybody is manipulating, but carry on.
The CCP threat is very real, and it's sorry. I'm feeling sassy today. I know. I'm trying to rein it in.
So please, by all means, don't reel it in. Continue to be sassy because you show us exactly who you are.
Tomorrow, the Energy and Commerce Committee will hold a markup on this bill and a companion piece of legislation, the Protecting Americans' Data from Foreign Adversaries Act.
It's interesting that our political representatives, whose minds are stuck in the dial-up generation, want to protect the data of Americans, which lives in deep broadband and the cloud. They don't even know what they are talking about, yet somehow they have it in their heads that China is the primary negative influence. Have you looked at Russia? Have you looked at the hundreds of websites that are out there to spread mis and disinformation? Have you looked at people inside the United States, such as one of the chief wankers here on this app, the elder millennial, who is spreading nothing but mis and disinformation and should be on trial for defamation and hate speech? Maybe if you want to clear house and clean the slate, you need to look at more than just the application, but the people who are using it, and truly crack down there. You'd actually really do something positive rather than disabling and disallowing 170 million Americans to communicate with one another.
A group of dedicated lawmakers have worked significantly, in depth, and collaboratively on this bill, and it cuts across both chambers and on both sides of the aisle. Lawmakers, as was pointed out, from all factions of the House and Senate are coming together because this is not political. This is about the United States sovereignty, protecting Americans, our national security, and our constitutional rights.
Amendments, such as the First Amendment, right? The idea that we can address the government with our grievances, which we have across the board more than ever before. And perhaps it isn't numerically more than ever before, except it feels that way because we can now express ourselves on an application that is used by 170 million Americans, thereby indicating to politicians who have really not our best interest in mind on both sides of the aisle that they have lost control, that their very form of manipulation is no longer welcome in the United States, and we are willing, able, and capable of addressing our grievances. Of course, we can't have that. So in conjunction with the variety of social media networks that we have in the United States, who are losing money by leaps and bounds and influence to ByteDance/TikTok, in conjunction with politicians losing their power positions and their manipulative influence, of course it makes sense that they want to get rid of the application that 170 million of us enjoy.
Now, within hours of the announcement of this legislation, TikTok, who just happens to be the most public forward-facing entity, which again, this isn't against TikTok specifically, but any app that is owned by a foreign adversary, they came out with a statement calling it a ban, which, as we have pointed out and corrected the record, it is not, and claimed that they would be fighting for Americans' First Amendment rights. Thank you, TikTok, for proving our point. You are manipulators, you don't tell the truth, and you damn sure don't give one iota about Americans' constitutional rights.
This is the one that I find most concerning, because clearly our government representatives have the expectation that TikTok is supposed to honor the First Amendment right of Americans. Later on, she goes to compare data points of hashtags and suppression and whatnot. And we all know that the app is swayed, but at least the app still gives us a platform and an opportunity to express ourselves. Whereas the United States government actually doubles down and wants to remove the very First Amendment that they're expecting TikTok to uphold. With that, the actual oppressor, the actual manipulator, is not TikTok. It's the bipartisan support within the United States government to extinguish the opportunity for Americans to express themselves. That is what's so concerning about this, because they don't even flinch in telling us straight to our faces that, oh, this is not a ban. In other words, they believe to have found an opportunity to sell this to us, but at the same token, suffocate our opportunities to tell the government the grievances that we have and how absolutely appalled we are with their representation.
The irony of the CCP claiming to stand up for Americans' First Amendment rights is definitely the joke of the century. They seem to have forgotten that they not only steal Americans' data, violate their Fourth Amendment rights regularly, but also violate Americans' First Amendment rights daily.
Obviously more of the same here, but having the audacity to accuse a foreign government of disrespecting the First Amendment right, which they have no obligation to do so, yet at the same token violating the First Amendment right of Americans by its own government, tells us everything we need to know. But more so, the blatant setup of wanting to enable the intellectual property theft under adverse conditions of operation in the United States, perpetuated by the United States government, is absolutely just chilling. The United States government is setting up to be a thief. And while they are not going into the shop stealing it themselves, they're setting up the conditions by which the IP will be stolen. And I don't know if the Chinese government actually does this with American IP. We know that numerous manufacturers in China are ripping off patent-protected, IP-protected products from the US. We know that. But I am unaware of where the Chinese government stole an IP from an American company. I'm sure there might be some evidence out there, but here we have the American government blatantly setting up the conditions for the theft of intellectual property of a foreign organization. That really makes the United States government the bully in the room. And I can't believe I'm saying that, because I have absolutely no love for the CCP. But that does not hold the United States government free from harm when they conduct themselves in the same or worse manner.
We know that they are turning content creators into foot soldiers. That is what this is about. This is a Chinese communist-controlled company complaining that they won't have unfettered access to Americans' private data, geolocations, metadata, and contacts. Remember, this is a CCP-controlled company claiming to stand up for constitutional rights while simultaneously engaging in slavery and horrific human rights abuses.
You might want to be careful with the latter argument here, because the United States government has caused its fair share of harm and continues to do so. All I'm referring to, for instance, as a data point for reference, is the prison complex that is heavily industrialized and certainly acts in a manner that is akin to what she just accused the Chinese government of. Simultaneously, numerous organizations in the United States have access to all of our data, so much so, again, Facebook as well as Google, that they have sold our data to, again, for instance, Cambridge Analytica. So, in other words, the argument that they have is moot. It doesn't exist. It is rendered useless. But unfortunately, we have voted them into place. So now we face the consequences of their actions. And one such consequence may very well be that they will extinguish our opportunity to communicate. With that being said, we have to devise alternative ways. We talked about this numerous times before. A blockchain-driven app, or perhaps a peer-to-peer driven app that enables us a similar or the same function as TikTok has. Unfortunately, such things are atrociously expensive to create and maintain. Plus, there needs to be an entity that is capable of maintaining the servers without falling under US jurisdiction and US influence, because just because we're creating another app doesn't mean that the United States won't assert its influence to control such a replacement app just the same. In any regard, the US is conducting itself in the most despicable manner, which we should not be surprised by. The question is, how are we going to react to this, and what are we going to do about it?